everyone, thanks for tuning in with me today. Today's game I'll be reviewing is Tetris 2 for the NES, also known as Tetris Flash in Japan. The footage you'll see in this video is from the Japanese version, but besides the title screen and box art, the two games are exactly the same. What most people don't know about this game is who developed it. Most people would instantly say Nintendo since their name is on and in the game, but this game was actually developed by a company called Tosei, a highly secretive company that didn't like to take credit for their work. Now, I know some people think that's bullshit because what game developer in their right mind wouldn't want to take credit for their efforts? Well, according to Masa Agarita, vice president of Tosei's US division, he said that their policy is not to have a vision, but rather to follow customers' visions. He also said that most of the time, they'd either reject the idea of staff credits in their games, or they'd use aliases. Tetris 2 was released on September 21st, 1993 in Japan and October 1993 in the USA. It was also released in Europe the same year, but I don't know when exactly. Before I review this game, let's go over a little history. Don't worry, I'm not going to tell you about the history of Tetris itself, because if you're a gamer, you should know that by now. Instead, I'm going to tell you about this game's name. Now, in Japan, there was previously a game titled Tetris 2 plus Bombless. It was really just regular Tetris with Bombless added. This game was never released outside of Japan, so when Tetris Flash was released in the USA, the name was changed to Tetris 2 since there wasn't any other Tetris games on the NES. Well, besides the first one. And the Tension version. Got that? Good. On to the review. The gameplay for Tetris 2 is simple. Line up 3 or more of the same color in a row to make the bombs explode. That sounds similar to another Nintendo game I know. Maybe Dr. Mario? Yeah, it's basically the same exact game. Connect enough of the same colors to make them explode. Shit, that was my grandpa's favorite game. Well, that and the Adventures of Lolo games on NES, in which he beat all 3 of them, or at least that's what he told me anyway. Now, the whole bomb thing is pretty much all the commercial advertised. This shit would never fly in the USA now. The USA would look at Tosei as terrorists for putting bombs in their games. Now, there's more to it than just simply clearing out bombs. There's 3 colors, red, yellow, and green. In one player mode, there's 1 bomb of each color that flashes. Your goal is to explode the 3 bottom flashing bombs, after which you'll proceed to the next level. Clearing one of the flashing bombs will dispose of all of the other bombs of the same color. For example, if you clear the bottom red bomb, all the other red bombs on the board will explode. There's also a way to do this with the Tetris pieces. If you can get 6 of the same color in a row, every Tetris piece fragment will clear off the screen. The only way to do this is to connect 2 of the same color with a 1-colored eyepiece. What I mean by that is, in the later levels you'll get pieces that are all 1 color. You can also do it with 1 Tetris piece fragment connected to a bomb. You may have also noticed the new pieces in this game. I can't really explain them because of their shape, but for these new Tetris pieces, you can move any fragments that aren't horizontally or vertically connected to the Tetris piece after the main part of the Tetris piece has been placed. This helps a great deal in the later levels when there's more bombs on the screen. If you complete a level fast enough, you'll get a bonus score. Come on, this is 1993, nobody cares about the damn score. All I want to do is complete the game. Speaking of which, unlike the original Tetris, which doesn't really end, this one does. There's 80 stages, clear all of them, and you're treated to a mediocre ending. Couldn't they have at least put credits in or something? Oh wait, this is Tosei, the company that doesn't like to give credit. Well, if they did it in their earlier titles such as Basis Loaded 2, 3 in the Japanese version of 4, or Frankenstein, then why not this? Oh well, it doesn't matter because the Canadian Copyrights Database has a list of all the people who worked on the game. I don't know how in God's name they got all that information, but wow, what a great thing. But still, I would have liked something better for all my efforts, especially since you can't select any level higher than 30 from the main menu. That means you have to do all of this in one sitting, hoping to God that either your game doesn't lock up or you get a blood clot. That is ludicrous. The ending just isn't worth the effort. I mean, imagine someone back in 1993 who actually beat this game, because I'm sure at least a few people did, whether they lived in the USA or Japan. I would have called Nintendo and complained. I'm not joking. Now, some people would say it's the best that they could do since it's NES, but there were earlier games on the NES that had better endings, such as Pool of Radiance, and hell, even the Super Nintendo version of this game has a better ending. I'll talk about that later though. Back to the game though. For every 10 levels you complete, you get a cutscene. I'm not sure what these cutscenes are supposed to signify. I mean, I know they probably explain the game's storyline, but God help me if I can figure out what that is. This game's theme makes no sense. It's like Native American elements mixed with outer space. I don't get it. Regarding the cutscenes though, I believe they are different depending on what speed you use throughout the game. Low, medium, and high. Now let's talk about the 2-player mode. You can either go head-to-head with another player or a computer, ranging from 3 difficulty settings accompanied by some animal on a stone tablet. What? Anyways, there's easy, which is a deer, normal, which is a leopard, and hard, which is a bird. You must defeat your opponent 3 times to win. Every victory results in a really weird looking smiley face added to the winner's side of the screen. If you beat the computer player, the game shows the stone tablet shattering into pieces. If the computer beats you, the animal comes to life out of the stone tablet. What drugs were the game designers on? Seriously, what were they on? Because I'd like to try some. The rules in the 2-player modes are a little different. The objective in the 2-player modes isn't to clear the bottom bombs, but rather to clear each individual bomb. Certain tricks and tactics can result in the opponent's piece being forced down at a certain speed. You'll know if you've done it when you hear a short fanfare, but beware, because as you may have known, your opponent can use these tactics against you too. Also, the 2 players can also get their opponent's board height to decrease. That about does it for the 2-player modes though. Now let's talk about the graphics. I really like the title screen in the Famicom version, but the NES version is kind of crappy. Why didn't they use the Famicom version instead? Anyways, for 1993 I would expect a little better, but it's Tetris. There really isn't a need for spectacular graphics. I'm not asking for anything Sunsoft, but I know they could have done a little better of a job. Most of what you see in the menus is just different shades of brown. The in-game backgrounds don't fare much better either, just a plain orange background with a repeated outline of an animal. However, the cutscene graphics are actually pretty cool looking, like the title screen. Too bad you don't get more cutscenes. It's nice to see after seeing all those repetitive graphics. Overall, the graphics are just decent. Nothing horrible, but nothing to write home about either. The music in Tetris 2 is pretty good. The game gives you 3 choices of in-game music to choose from. I like how they made them different for 1-player and 2-player modes. I will tell you this though, you'd better pick a favorite because that's what you'll be hearing throughout the whole game. Of course, you can turn the music off, but being the video game music fan that I am, that's virtually non-existent for me. Miyuki Uemura and Mitsuhiko Takano collaborated to create the game's soundtrack. Of course, you can tell this is a Toze game just by knowing what their sound engine sounds like. Mitsuhiko went on to compose the music for the Super Nintendo version all by himself. I like that version's soundtrack better, but maybe it's because it's the one I grew up with. Little did I know that years later, I'd get to talk to him. Thank God for Facebook, right? I do have one complaint about the music though. Couldn't they have programmed it so you could switch between the songs or turn them off while in game? I know they could do it because that feature was available in Tetris 2 plus Bombless, and that came out before this game. The sound effects were pretty standard. Nothing to write home about, and nothing that would make you mute the television, or emulator. Some people may not call the music or sound memorable, but when you hear it play a million times, I can assure you, you will remember it. And you may even hum it while taking a shower or walking down the street. Or you may just get really annoyed. Overall, pretty good audio for this game. Now it's time to talk about the game's controls. I know I should have mentioned this earlier while I was talking about the gameplay, but I'll be the first to admit I'm not an expert reviewer, so my organization kind of sucks. Anyway, the controls are standard. The D-pad selects menus, moves your Tetris pieces left and right, and makes them fall down faster. Select will place the cursor on different modes at the title screen, but you can use the D-pad for that as well. Start will select options and pause the game. A confirms options and rotates your piece clockwise, and B does the opposite, cancel out options and move your piece counterclockwise. The controls are just fine. There's no stiffness or lag time when you press a button. I had no problem with the controls and therefore I think they're good. As for the game's replay value, it's pretty good since the levels are different every time you play, changing the difficulty for each level. Just don't expect anything special if you actually do beat all 80 levels, which if you do, you deserve a medal for your efforts. If I had to rate Tetris Flash or Tetris 2, I'd give it a 3 out of 5. It's not a bad game per se, but there's really nothing special about it that makes it stand out. It's a Dr. Mario clone, most of the in-game graphics are dull, the fact that you have to beat all 80 levels in one sitting is ridiculous, and the dull ending doesn't make it worth the effort. Still, a pretty fun game that's enjoyable, preferably with another player. I just don't think it deserves as much of the negative criticism it gets, yet I can see why it has achieved that status. Tetris 2 may not have been the best game out there, but it did find its way to the Game Boy and the Super Nintendo. Now, as I promised, I'll talk about the Super Nintendo version a little bit. The Super Nintendo version is pretty much the same game, except the theme is different. Instead of the Native American / spacecraft from the NES version, the Super Nintendo version takes place in the household. There's also some weird characters for each difficulty. You got a woman for easy, a man for normal, and 2 guys for hard. Each of the cutscenes involves something funny happening to the characters. Now, I still don't understand the storyline, but at least it makes more sense than the NES version. There is one new addition to the Game Boy and Super Nintendo versions that didn't make it into the NES version, a puzzle mode. There's 100 levels, and get this, there's a password for each level, and it's only 3 characters. What a big improvement. The only kick in the nuts is that the password option is not in the Game Boy version. You can, however, select up to level 30. Also, in the Super Nintendo version, there's now 4 different endgame tunes for each mode instead of 3. I personally think they're better composed. Overall, I'd skip the NES and Game Boy versions and check out the Super Nintendo version. Now, if you're looking to buy this game, the USA version is around $5 to $10 for both the NES, Game Boy, and Super Nintendo. I got my copy of the Famicom version for $20 because it was complete in box. It's about $15 for that on eBay, but you have to take into account the shipping, which makes it around $20. Now, I don't know much about the Game Boy version since I never really played that one, but I'll tell you as much as I know about it. It's pretty much a straight port from the NES version. You could still play against a computer or another human player if you have the link cable, but who uses those anymore? I also noticed the cutscenes are different, but I didn't really care to watch them all the way through. Besides, you still get a shitty ending for all your hard work. Anyways, that concludes this review. I hope you enjoyed this. If you're new to my videos, I'm not going to ask you to comment, like, or subscribe or any of that because I don't want to pressure you into doing so. Plus, I'm not looking for popularity, I just want to provide entertainment for anybody who watches my videos. I do plan on reviewing the Super Nintendo version of this game as well, but I don't know if / when I'll get to that. So thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace out, and happy gaming.